What's up, fellas? Didn't plan on making a video tonight, as you can tell. My cheek's very red. I can't actually believe what I just watched. As a Nets fan, I don't have experience with stuff like this in terms of my team as a basketball fan. And Kevin Durant legitimately just saved the Nets' entire season. I'm just going to talk about the game. I've got the box score pulled up here. I got a lot of observations about the game. I don't have anything else to say. Okay, so Nets-Bucks Game 5. I wake up today, and everything that I'd known said that James Harden wasn't playing today. Spencer Dinwiddie probably had a better chance of playing in this game, as far as I knew as of last night, than James Harden did. And I wake up this morning, they're like, okay, James Harden's doubtful. It's like, that's odd. I don't think I've ever remember anybody being upgraded from out to doubtful. Most of the time you're out, you're out. Gets about middle of the day. James Harden's questionable and expected to play. It's up to him. It's his choice. He's pushing to play. And I'm like, what is happening? Is this going to be an Anthony Davis type situation where he goes out on the floor and clearly doesn't need to be out there? I mean, Anthony Davis lasted about 2.5 nauseating minutes where it was clear he should have been on the floor. I was nervous about that. I knew that the Nets needed to win this game. It's Game 5 at home. If they lose Game 5 at home, they're going to lose 6 on the road in Milwaukee and the season's over. This was, make no mistake, this was the Nets' entire season. There's a reason James Harden advocated to play as hard as he did. And ultimately, he ended up getting his wish. And initially, obviously he was taking it easy. He only wanted to take threes. I don't think he got to the rim a single time. But the game wasn't about James Harden. The game was about Kevin Durant. And then obviously we got to give Jeff Green some props. We'll talk about some stuff the Bucks were doing. But I'm watching this game and the Nets just aren't in a rhythm. There's nothing going for them collectively. They can't defend. They're not connected in any kind of way. And the Bucks are fully confident. I mean, they're running their stuff at full speed. They're getting to the rim. They're getting everything they want. They get out to a nice lead. And there's 7 minutes left in the third quarter. The Nets are down 17. And I went to the bathroom and I'm thinking to myself, this Nets season is over. A handful of days ago, the Nets were up 2-0 in the series, looked dominant after being up 50 at home in Game 2. And here we are, and I legitimately was considering this idea that the Nets season might just be over. And then Kevin Durant put on arguably one of the greatest playoff performances of all time. I mean, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that. Kyrie Irving's not playing. James Harden is out there at best 50%. And Kevin Durant puts up 49, 17, and 10, plays every single minute of the game, was fantastic defensively. And, there were issues on both sides. The Nets were doing some things coaching-wise that weren't fantastic. The Bucks were doing some things coaching-wise that weren't fantastic. But I don't want to go anywhere other than positive to start this video just by talking about what Kevin Durant just did. The shot-making, the playmaking, defensively, rebounding, playing the de facto 5 for a good part of this game because Blake Griffin played a good amount and then Nick Claxton barely played, or I don't even know if Nick Claxton saw the floor for more than a minute or two in this game. Kevin Durant played out of his mind. I mean, there were multiple big threes down the stretch. He hit a double clutch 3 on an awful offensive possession and missed a free throw to miss out on the 50-point game, which would have rounded out the box score nicely. But we're halfway through the third quarter. Like I said, I think the Nets season is almost over. They're down 17 with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. And then something happens. Milwaukee starts to extend their pressure a little bit. Kevin Durant starts to be the one initiating the offense, bringing the ball up the floor. And PJ Tucker's really committed to guarding Kevin Durant the full length of the floor for some reason. And the Nets are like, okay, that's fine. We're going to have Brook Lopez, a defender, set a screen between the half-court line and the three-point line, and you're going to get Kevin Durant with a full head of steam going to the rim against Brook Lopez. And he did that about 3 times. He got an and one once, a layup once, and kicked it out to an open Jeff Green for a 3 another time. And immediately the Nets were in an offensive rhythm. It went from 17 down to 12 or something because the Bucks were still hitting shots at this point. And then the Nets decided, okay, we can't guard these guys. We're starting to score. We're starting to get into an offensive rhythm in the second half. And then the other adjustment the Nets made was they said, we're going to go back to what we've done the entire season defensively, which is switch everything. The Nets have been a little bit different in their defensive schemes against this Milwaukee team because they understand how difficult the Giannis matchup is and just the size of the Bucks in general. They didn't want to get into a situation in which they're having to switch all the time and deal with Giannis post-ups against Joe Harris or Brook Lopez post-ups against any of their smaller, weaker defenders, and that leaves them even more vulnerable when it comes to giving up offensive rebounds than they already were to start with, being the smaller team. So they were really, really reluctant to switch, but they couldn't guard any of the ball screen actions, any of the down screen stuff that Milwaukee was throwing at them. And so Steve Nash said, screw it. We're just going to switch everything. We're going to try and defend and scramble as much as we can and hope we get the defensive rebound. And as soon as that happened, the Bucks played right into the hands of what the Nets were trying to do, because they ran what they were running the entire game. It's not that they weren't trying to get offense, but they identified mismatches. Oh, James Harden is guarding Drew Holiday, and he can barely move. James Harden is guarding Giannis in the post, and they just went to those mismatches and didn't do anything. I mean, Pat Connaughton was getting to the rim. The Nets don't have any rim protection. Any dribble handoff, any ball screen that they ran for the first 25 minutes of the game was working beautifully. And as soon as the Nets went to that switching everything defense, Milwaukee got really locked in on these mismatches and on isolation ball, and it looked a lot like the first two games of this series for Milwaukee offensively, where it was a lot of isolation. The Nets could kind of set up, could kind of start to get in rebounding position. And, you know, there were still some great shots made by Milwaukee, but Drew Holiday had some rough moments. Giannis had some rough moments in terms of offensive decision-making, and they just were not able to score the ball nearly as well. I mean, the Nets had almost no resistance to what they were doing for the first 25 minutes of this game. Even when Milwaukee missed shots, they were still getting great offense every single time down the floor. I mean, there were multiple times where there was one or two dribbles towards the paint, a little bit of help, kick out, and Brook Lopez was knocking down threes. And it was just a really tough thing for the Nets to deal with defensively. They switched everything, and they started to get KD going a little bit. They started to get to the rim a little bit more. Then the Bucks felt like they couldn't play Brook Lopez. They went to that Giannis at the 5 lineup that really killed the Nets in Game 4. And then the shot making started to come alive, and Kevin Durant was just incredible down the stretch of that game. Like I said, Jeff Green deserves a ton of credit. Obviously, the series is not over. The Nets have to win one of these next two games, either on the road in Milwaukee or Game 7, at home potentially. And Harden obviously did not look great. He did some things. I'll be quite honest, he flopped a lot. He tried to get calls. He had an and one that I'm not sure he really got fouled on. And he was doing what he could. And I respect that he went out there and tried. But I wouldn't be all that confident that you're going to be getting a ton out of James Harden over the next couple of games. And I don't know. I didn't think I was going to be making a video tonight, but that was just such an incredible game, an incredible experience to watch as a fan, that I felt like I had to. If you're a Bucks fan, you're probably watching that game and thinking, how did this end up happening? I mean, they were the far better team in the first half. I think they were up 15 at half. The Nets had a couple of chances to cut it down from there, but they just weren't shooting the ball well. Joe Harris's shooting struggles continue. Thank goodness Jeff Green made as many threes as he did. And then it was 28-38 in the third quarter and 21-33 in the fourth quarter in favor of Brooklyn in both of those. And again, it looked a lot like games 1 and 2 for the last, almost 20 minutes of the game between, the last 7 minutes of the third quarter and the last 12 minutes of the fourth quarter. So I don't have a lot of experience with this as a basketball fan, where a guy just puts on an incredible performance. And I think we've all kind of had our opinions about Kevin Durant. And I certainly had a lot of opinions about him when he decided to go to Golden State, just because, I respected his right to make that decision. But I certainly was a little bit disappointed because I knew what that would mean for the competitiveness of the league over the next couple of seasons. But nobody can ever take away what Kevin Durant did tonight. It's one of the all-time great playoff performances when you consider the amount of offensive responsibility he had to take on, playing 48 minutes. Joe Harris scored 5 points in this game. Blake was huge, hit a couple of threes. Jeff Green was fantastic. Those are the only 2 double-digit scores for the Nets in this game outside of Kevin Durant. You got to give him credit. A couple of other guys made great plays, and we'll see what happens now the rest of the way in this series. I mean, Milwaukee's going to make adjustments. They're not going to let Kevin Durant just get ahead of steam downhill towards the rim against Brook Lopez from half court like they did a couple possessions in this game. They'll make adjustments. I would expect them to, assuming James Harden plays in Game 6, attack James Harden way more offensively in a manner that doesn't mean just attacking in isolations. I think it's clear that James Harden is certainly hampered and especially defensively, lateral quickness-wise, things like that. But they started to just try and isolate him, whereas if you got him in any kind of ball screen action, it's basically 2-on-1 because Harden's going to get picked and he's not going to be able to recover, and he's basically just helpless. I would expect them to attack James Harden a lot more, when he's on the defensive end of the floor. And I don't know. I mean, the rotations were shortened a ton. I mean, we barely saw Nick Claxton. I don't think Bobby Portis touched the floor. Pat Connaughton had a good first half. We didn't see much of him in the second half. The Nets played a little bit of Mike James in the first and decided that wasn't going to work. Both these teams are really, really scrambling, trying to figure it out, with key guys obviously missing on both sides. But I couldn't help but make a video tonight. Kevin Durant just saved the Nets season. If they lose tonight, and it certainly looked like that was the path they were headed towards, their season was going to be over. And, there's no guarantees they win this series, but I found it very unlikely they were going to win Game 6 on the road in Milwaukee after having lost 3 straight games, no Kyrie and very, very limited James Harden. So that's an all-time incredible performance, and I can't wait, man. The thing that makes me nervous is obviously the health of Harden. I don't think Kyrie's playing the rest of the series, and KD just played 48 minutes, and I'm pretty confident that we're going every other day the rest of the way. So I think it's Thursday night is Game 6, and then Saturday night, I think, is Game 7. So obviously KD playing 48 minutes. He's played over 40 minutes, and I think every game of the series except for Game 2 because it was such a blowout. We'll see, man. He had to play that many minutes for them to win this game. Harden played for 46 minutes on a bad hamstring, I just realized, by the way. What a game. Incredible game. I can't wait for Game 6. It's going to be a ton of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, all the normal stuff. I'm all discombobulated. This is just a random rant video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the next one, fellas. Appreciate it.